there's no denying the simple fact that the Wii U was a bit of a flop on Nintendo's part. Not that I would say it's the worst console ever, but the system failed to draw in a sizable consumer base, compared to what the Switch is thankfully doing now. But in my opinion, one of the Wii U's shining lights came in the form of a new IP, and one of my favorite games on the system, Splatoon. A game that put a spin on the typical third-person shooter, was actually marketed competently, and became pretty popular. Not too shabby for a new IP. So of course, a sequel would eventually creep up to follow up on the first game's success. And man, did it have some expectations to meet. To me, it did just that, but not without a few very glaring bumps. I think the title of this video speaks for itself, but do note that this list applies to anything in the game as of Splatoon version 2.3.1. So things could indeed change in regards to what I think about the game, and we can look back on this list to see just how much the game improved or failed. Hopefully improved. Not much else to say except let the chaos commence! The original SplatNet had a few interesting things going for it, like weekly rankings among your friends, as well as the ability to view what maps would be coming up in the rotations. But there wasn't anything beyond that. Now we have Splatoon's sequel, and with it comes SplatNet 2, which I feel actually managed to do some things to shake things up for the service. Case in point, number 5. In the original Splatoon, any piece of gear you used had a main gear ability that it was stuck with forever. There was no way to change it, so if there was a certain combination of main and subs that you wanted on your gear, you had to be very lucky. But thanks to SplatNet 2's new shop, the impossible became possible. This new feature for SplatNet allows players to instantly order gear that would then be given to merch for you to purchase in the game. The kicker? These pieces of gear have main abilities that they won't have if purchased from just the game. This opens up huge options in strategizing what abilities you want to prioritize. An example, the white anchor tee normally has Ninja Squid for its main ability, but if that's not your cup of tea, then SplatNet 2's shop can give it to you with, say, Run Speed Up for its main ability. Also, if there was an ensemble of clothing you liked and wanted to wear but didn't because the main ability sucked, well, this shop can help make those pieces of gear be good while allowing you to look good. What's more is it updates with the game, so any new pieces of gear introduced will be added to the shop's rotation, which is awesome. Hard to believe an out-of-game feature I feel has helped the game so much. Good on ya, Annie. The weapons aspect in Splatoon 2 was something that I was both excited for and afraid of. I was excited because they were actually making changes to how certain weapons worked, and for the better. It opened up new strategies to how you used a certain weapon type, like rollers with their new jump fling and running speed up, and chargers with their new ability to briefly hold their charges while swimming. The same can be said for the new weapon types. Dualies have their dodge roll that can be pretty useful in getting out of binds, and Brellas have their, well, Brellas to shield behind. It was all good stuff, but what I was afraid of was the weapon selection. Before the big direct, it seemed like the dualies were the only new weapons, and the rest of the weapons would just be the old ones from the first game with new kits and nothing more. I believe this is the reason why the term Splatoon 1.5 was being thrown around before release. We wanted to see what was new about the game, and the aspect of new weapons to already existing weapon types was a very big expectation that I'm sure several fans of the first game were wanting to see realized. Thankfully, they delivered, and still are delivering, with some of the new weapons actually being designed around some of the new mechanics, like the Flings-A-Roller and the Goo Tuber. And with more updates planned, I'm sure we'll see more new weapons to try out and add to our collections. So as I briefly touched upon in the last entry, there wasn't a whole lot of new going on for Splatoon's sequel before the direct, which led to the whole Splatoon 1.5 bandwagon. But there was one thing that was shown off a lot to shake up the normal conventions of Splatoon. Enter Salmon Run. Simply put, this mode is a 4-player co-op zombie mode for Splatoon. In this mode, you participate in 3 waves of fighting countless hordes of salmonids. It's just like fighting Octarians in single player, but unlike single player, you work together with up to 3 other players to gather power eggs and harvest precious golden eggs from boss salmonids. During Grizzco's open hours, you're given a pre-selected set of 4 weapons that will rotate among players between waves, and you'll never know which of the 4 weapons you'll get to use. It just goes to show that no 2 rounds of Salmon Run will be the same. No, seriously. Sometimes events will happen to make things a little interesting. For example, the tide may change, which means the terrain will change, forcing players to adapt, so stay on your toes, especially if it's nighttime or if fog rolls in. Regardless, if you're looking for a challenge, Salmon Run definitely delivers on that front, and overcoming those challenges pays off with all the rewards you can earn, which include money, exclusive gear, and even tickets and ability chunks. Sadly, the mode is not always available, so if you want the loot, well, the job's not going to do itself now, is it? It's not perfect, trust me, we'll get there soon enough. But Salmon Run as a new mode has a lot of great things going for it. It takes the normal gameplay of Splatoon, throws in the enemy aspect of single player, and melts it into something new and unique that helps prove Splatoon 2 isn't so much a 1.5. Hard to believe this is a very recent change, but it was a much needed addition. The lack of this feature plagued the first game and even Splatoon 2. What am I getting at, you say? Well, consider this scenario. So, you're playing regular or ranked. You're enjoying one of your favorite weapons in the game, but then you want to switch things up with a different one, only to find that, you can't change your loadout in between matches in the same room, meaning you're stuck with what you have until you exit the lobby, which you don't want to do because you just sat there for a room to become available and waited 5 minutes for the room to fill up with 8 players. Yeah, it was a pain having to endure this in the first game, especially when it came to playing with friends. You could change your loadout in between matches in private friend battles, but not regular mode? What the monkey f***? But all hope was not lost, for the big November update descended from the heavens and said, "To heck with that hassle." This change was long overdue. You have no idea how many times I've wanted to switch weapons in a room in regular battles, but couldn't. This one change saved a whole lot of time and frustration. If you're not doing so hot with your current weapon, well now, you can switch to something else and try your luck with that, as well as a different set of gear if you want. All without having to leave the current online room you're in. And if you see your registered friends in the room, now you don't have to leave to change your gear, join them from your friends list, and have to wait for their match to end. Just select to change your gear at the end of a match, and you're all set to continue playing with friends. This is such a simple addition to the game, but it was something that we Splatoon veterans have been waiting for since the first game. Thank you, Nintendo, for hearing our pleas and ending this irritation. Yet another recent addition to the game, but it just goes to show that the devs can put in some really awesome things into this game way after launch with these updates. I also find it hard to believe my favorite new thing in the sequel is something from Ranked, but I just can't get enough of the insanity that is Clam Blitz. Being a ranked mode, I didn't know if I'd like it since I'm not much of a ranked player. I don't know, maybe I'm just a wuss who doesn't want to get his rank lowered because he's not that good at some of the ranked modes, and wishes the game let players choose what ranked mode to play online, and not just for private matches. Regardless, Clam Blitz has brought me so much enjoyment that I keep coming back to. Now, what is Clam Blitz? Well, think of it like American football, but since this is Splatoon, you can guess that there's some kind of wacky spin on it. Collect 10 clams scattered throughout the map to create a power clam, throw it at the opposing team's goal to open its barrier, and start chucking away those clams into the goal until you win or get splatted by the enemy. Yeah, don't think the enemy will let you take the goal so easily, as they will retaliate back and stop you from throwing a power clam into their barrier, especially since having a power clam is like having a big hit me sign. And if the barrier's open, but your team fails to throw a clam into the goal before the barrier cooldown ends, the barrier will reform and you must collect more clams to form another power clam all over again. It's all about tactical defense and knowing when to strike for the goal. Though, for me personally, I just love the thrill of rushing a power clam to the enemy goal, only to be met by opponent inklings, which then I'll just say, screw finding them, just throw the freaking clam and be done with it. I'll most likely get splatted, but as long as the power clam hits the goal, I don't care, because hopefully my teammates are right behind with clams in tow to throw into the goal. Yeah, this mode wasn't available at launch, nor was it hinted at in anything aside from data mines, but I think it was well worth the long wait. It's a unique Splatoon twist on something like American football, let alone a new mode that I feel is the most unique out of all the ranked modes. It definitely earns a spot in my book as one of Splatoon 2's best additions, and it's the thing I love the most in Splatoon 2. So you've seen what I loved in the game, but what about the things I hated? Let's find out. One thing I absolutely loved in the first game is the multitude of diverse maps. Most of them were very unique and creative, forcing players to adjust to their set pieces and gimmicks. So needless to say, the sequel's brand new maps had some shoes to fill, and I'd be lying if I said all those expectations were met. Now, I'm not gonna say all of the new maps are bad, but some of them left much to be desired. Me, personally, I noticed most of the new maps, especially the ones at launch, were very reliant on an overall square and rectangular shape. I tried to figure out why I was bugged by this, since there were maps in the first game to have its entire shape be very square and rectangular. But then it hit me. While some of the maps in the first game had these shapes, the terrain, set pieces, gimmicks, and elevations made them stand out as maps. Arowana Mall with the big slopes in the center and near spawn. Hammerhead Bridge with the graded bridge. And in Trophy Games with the fans that raise platforms. But some of the newer maps, well, and they feel very basic and frankly uninteresting. They tend to have the same square rectangular shape along with several angled slopes, almost the same elevation levels, and gimmicks or set pieces that are either hit or miss. Mostly miss. The reef has the center bridge, which is cool, but other than that, it's basically Urchin Underpass. Inkblot Art Academy has the center tower, but Blackbilly Skate Park had this too. Funny enough, that stage is back in the sequel. Sturgeon Shipyard has the drawbridges, which would have been a cool gimmick, but since they randomly rise and lower throughout the match with the higher platforms behind already there to take advantage of, there's really no point to them. And Snapper Canal, which is all over the place with elevations, slopes, and set pieces that seem randomly scattered about the map, making it feel very cluttered. Again, not all the maps in the sequel are like this. Heck, just look at Humpback Pump Track, Muscle Forge Fitness, Schellendorf Institute, and especially every form of Shifty Station, but I can't just look past the ones that didn't leave a good impression. And it's a shame there are quite a few new maps that did just that. I really expected better. Seriously, why are all of the good map design ideas being limited to Shifty Station? In the original Splatoon, getting the sub-abilities you wanted on a piece of gear was a chore to get accomplished. It was all chance which subs you got on a piece of gear, so if there were specific ones you wanted, you had to grind Super Sea Snails or Gold in order to have several chances at rerolls. Keep in mind that Super Sea Snails became harder to obtain after Splatfests ended, so for Splatoon 2, they tried to make it easier to get the sub-abilities you wanted on a piece of gear. Notice I said tried. Now, you could do the same deal like in the first game and just re-roll your subs in hopes of getting what you want. But Splatoon 2 also gave you the option to scrub sub-abilities off gear, allowing you another chance to level up your gear that got scrubbed while using the ability chunks on the same or another piece of gear to put those abilities on that gear. Sounds like a great addition, right? Well, it would be if it weren't more tedious than re-rolling. Look, I don't mind having to spend resources to scrub abilities to put on other gear. It makes it so it's not some cheap system to abuse, but it costs 20,000 gold just to scrub off the sub-abilities from a single piece of gear. And you need 10 chunks of a specific ability in order to apply that sub to a gear's empty slot. So if you're wanting a bunch of specific subs on your gear, you're gonna be grinding for a long time before you get there. And I honestly don't have the patience to grind all of that. Every time there's an upcoming Splatfest, you can scrub off the subs on a Splat tee for just 2,000 gold instead of the usual 20,000, which is awesome, but keep in mind that Splatfests aren't gonna last forever. Why couldn't the regular cost be that? I already have to deal with grinding 20,000 feathers and Fire Emblem Heroes just to promote a single unit to 5-star. I didn't think I'd have to experience a similar feat here. The only other way you're getting ability chunks is via the rewards from Salmon Run. Soon enough is close at hand. So when Splatoon 2 was about to release, Nintendo allowed players to play in a world premiere Splatfest. And when the time came, well, it was a great time. But all was not sunshine and roses. You may recall this image floating around Twitter during the time of the world premiere, with its extreme way of wording its warning of banning players should they be constantly disconnecting by whatever means. And when the full game released, this warning screen was there. And I've hated it ever since. In regards to this very flawed system of banning via disconnects by whatever means, when I say by whatever means, I mean by whatever means. This includes random disconnects from out of nowhere in the middle of matches. Look, I can understand penalizing players who disconnect from rage quitting or hacking, however that happens or works. But what about players who aren't doing anything suspicious and just want to play the freaking game, but keep getting unstable connections every time they try to play a match, resulting in them disconnecting? What, you're gonna tell me the game's gonna threaten to ban them too? The answer to that question is yes. Yeah, players who are playing the game legally and normally can be punished for simply having a bad connection. That's not right, Nintendo. Like I said, I understand why this is here, but because of the way the game bans players for disconnecting, innocent players are affected, resulting in them getting banned for not doing anything wrong. This needs to change. And it's soon enough. Like I said, Salmon Run as a new mode is great, as it is one of the biggest new things in the sequel, with many good things going for it to shake up the traditional Splatoon gameplay. And I love that about it. But I'm sorry, I'm not gonna give it a full sugarcoating because it's new, and excuse the mode's multitude of problems that have persisted since launch. Buckle your seats, Squiddos, because this is going to be a long explanation. Let's start with the weapons. I've already brought up how weapons are pre-selected for each of Grizzco's open hours, and how they rotate between waves. But what you see is what you get. Sometimes, the weapon selection is good. Other times, it's not so good. Trust me when I say I've had friends not even bother playing Salmon Run because the weapon selection wasn't that great. You know what else isn't great? Unfair difficulty spikes, be it from nighttime or fog events, or from constant spamming of Salmonid and Salmonid bosses, the latter of which can be incredibly frustrating if it's high tide, and thus limited space to move around in. Can you have a regular fair challenge in Salmon Run? Yes you can. But that doesn't always happen. But hey, it's okay. You get rewards for your hard work. Yeah, you do. After getting a certain amount of points that take forever to grind up. I'll give them credit for making the exclusive gear easy to get, but the more useful items, like tickets and ability chunks, require getting an insane amount of points that entail heavy grinding for multiple playthroughs. And with the issues I've outlined before with ability chunks, combined with everything I've just brought up about Salmon Run, yeah, I don't have that kind of patience to go through all of Salmon Run's bull crap. But the universally accepted complaint towards Salmon Run, it's only available at certain times, unless you're playing local offline co-op. But that version of Salmon Run doesn't have the rewards. Well, Salmon Run's rewards anyway. Supposedly, the reason the developers made it like this is because they believe this is how it should be enjoyed, and having Salmon Run available at any time would worsen the experience. Okay, I can get behind the rewards not being available all the time. But what if friends want to play the mode just for the heck of it? Sure, there's the shoal, but again, that's offline. This is the game's new mode that was advertised several times before launch. Come on, devs, at least make this kind of change. Here's hoping an update can fix some, if not all, of these problems in the near future. But only time will tell. That was a lot to say in ranting on Salmon Run's problems. And yet, not even that can come close to what I believe to be Splatoon 2's biggest problem. Now, the removal of damage up, I feel, was a necessary cut, as it was absolutely ridiculous in the first game. But at the same time, without damage up, people can't get the quick kills like they used to. Unless you use a rapid fire weapon that can kill very easily. Now, when I say rapid fire weapon, I'm referring to weapons that have a faster firing rate than the base weapon of a weapon type. But in this case, this issue is primarily focused on shooter weapons. So, basically anything that shoots faster than the base splatter shot. Yes, a lot of rapid-fire weapons are short-range, and thus can be countered by longer-ranged weapons. But I feel that's cancelled out when the kits of many of these rapid-fire weapons are too good. That's probably why you frequently see these weapons appearing in most online matches. A vast majority of rapid-fire weapons have typical bomb sub-weapons, giving them something to fight back with against long-range weapons. And nearly all of them are equipped with some of the best specials in the game. Sploosh-o-matic, Splashdown, Splattershot Jr. and Inzap 85, Ink Armor, Aerospray MG, Curling Bomb Launcher, Aerospray RG, Baller. These are all really good specials, and since rapid-fire weapons can fill up their special gauge so quickly, you will see them often. Yes, there was an update that did in fact nerf a few of the rapid-fire weapons, but that didn't stop players from constantly using them. I'm still seeing rapid-fire weapons being used often and dominating matches, even in version 2.3.1. I know I'm not alone when I say this needs to be fixed. And I don't just mean fix their weapon properties. I think it's time the devs actually altered the kits of some of these weapons for a change. Because this is not fun. I'm ChaosKey4013, and while that did seem like a sour note to leave on, trust me, Splatoon 2 is a great game and should not be passed up. It may not seem like a sequel, and yes, Splatoon 2 has its problems, but it is by no means a bad game. There is stuff here to justify it as being more than just a repackaging of the first game, offering new things and refining what came before in the original. But don't just take my word for it, buy the game and try it out yourself. It takes time, effort, and dedication to craft the game you want to make, so game devs work hard to deliver on the games they promise. Unfortunately, the silence isn't always kept, and some people decide they want all the attention for themselves, and then proceed to spoil the surprise for everyone. This is what happens when man is given a dangerous tool, a tool we like to call the internet. Next time, top 10 leaks in the video game industry. See you guys then!